Don in London, hello. It's April 5th, 2013. My video is all about recovery from addiction to substances and behaviour. My addictive substance, alcohol. So hello, I'm Don and I'm an alcoholic. And sometimes when people ask my name when I'm going past in the street because we've had a conversation, I can say that. I actually say it out loud by mistake. I think I'm in a meeting of the Fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is part of my recovery story, a great deal of my recovery story in fact, which is why I share about it here. So I am Don, I'm an alcoholic in recovery. Professionals got me dry but not sober. They got me to being a dry drunk, which is a very angry person who doesn't know how to handle life too well, in my case. I cannot speak for you if you're an alcoholic and doing what you do to keep sober one day at a time, and if you're in the Fellowship of AA, you know I don't speak for the Fellowship of AA, never can, never will, because there are no leaders. It's a fellowship or society of people of equals, which is very good because it means nobody's going to tell you what to do. And if people start telling you what to do and they get on your wick because it's bad advice for you, you can say thank you very much for your advice and walk away. There's nothing worse than trying to tell somebody else when they're telling you. It just ends up in resentment, and that's really what my video is all about today. So why do I mention AA? As I say, it's the backbone. The fellowship saved my life and still does keep me on track one day at a time with friendship, fellowship, love, and 12 nifty steps of action, 12-step principles, which mean I get my freedom of choice back today, given life circumstances and where the world is right now. It doesn't give me back a fantasy, it gives me back reality. So I share about AA, how it helps, and the steps. And I share the AA preamble. As you know, if you go to a meeting, it's really important that we say it at the beginning, so it starts a framework of what's going on. So the AA preamble is as follows. So you know it, or you're new, I always say it, because I need reminding. Why on earth do I do these videos in the first place? Because I was asked. Anyway, Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. So that's it, sharing experience, strength and hope of now and the past as well. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, and if you were like me or have been like me, the desire to stop drinking, well, yes and no, yes and no, no but yes. So we tumble in however we get to fellowship, and we're probably very angry people or somewhat withdrawn. There are no dues or fees for AA membership, so it's free. We are self-supporting though through our own contributions, so we just sort of get by. We never have an excess of money in case it becomes an issue. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. At the same time, people in the fellowship sometimes do belong to sects, denominations, are involved in politics, have organisation and institutional connections, and they can engage in any controversy, and they do endorse and oppose causes. So everybody in fellowship does those things, but the fellowship itself is not about that. It's about our primary purpose, which is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So before meetings you'll hear people getting together and talking about what's going on today. In meetings people will share their experience, strength and hope of what's going on in their lives today. So you'll hear many affiliations of any particular kind you can imagine. And the good news is you keep your affiliations, or you start new ones which you prefer, one day at a time. So fellowship is a safe place. Anonymity is sanctuary. One, to find out who we are on a daily basis, and two, to express what's going on so we all learn from each other, and three, end it the meeting that is, either going with people for a friendly cup of tea or getting on with life as you choose. You can walk away and just get on with your life, but fellowship is a place where you can feel safe. And that's what I found. It was a sanctuary from me more than anything, because I was nuts when I first came to AA. And April's all about step 4, which is the fearless moral inventory or self-appraisal we do as part of the 12-step program. And step 4 feels difficult. So here are my reflections on today. 5th of April 2013. One of the hardest lessons is learning how to forgive. Step 4, the fearless moral inventory, highlights what we did because of the way we felt about people, places and things. And whatever actions we took as a result of our feelings, we need to admit and accept our part in matters, and also admit and accept the consequences of everything we have done. And there are consequences for what we do. We find ourselves losing people and new people coming in, or we lose everything and we don't know where we are. We might have done things which we are ashamed of and feel guilty about, and there are things to do about that. Anyway, going on from where I am today, I had a look in Webster's dictionary online about forgiveness, and it says 1. To give up resentment of or claim to requital. Forgive an insult, for example. To grant relief from payment. Forgive a debt. To cease to feel resentment against an offender. Well, actually what we find in recovery is that the biggest offender which might tip us backwards is resentment and anger. Pardon. Forgive one's enemies. Can you ever forgive me for being so selfish? I've never forgiven myself for the way I treated her. We must ask God to forgive us for our sins. When he feels he's been insulted, he finds it hard to forgive and forget. He finds it hard to forgive an insult. We must ask God to forgive our sins. The government has agreed to forgive some of the debt. So that's what it says in Webster's. And it goes on to say, similar words to forgiveness, related words: absolve, acquit, clear, exculpate, exonerate, vindicate, remit, shrieve or shrive, condone, disregard, excuse, ignore, pass over, shrug off, discharge, liberate, redeem, release, unburden. So step 4 is about unburdening these resentments which we've probably had for years about some things, and we didn't even know we really had those resentments because we were hanging on to them somewhere in the back of our minds, and it still affects the way we behave today. So old fears can get in the way. So step 4 again, anger and resentments are considered to be the number 1 offenders, which can tip a person back into the old life, where the balance of extremes comes out as feelings of fear, pride and ego. And when fear, pride and ego and resentment kick off in our heads, we want them out as quickly as we can, and the usual way in the past was to have a drink or drug or behave in a particular way to get over something, and I know I've done that. We can all be angry at many events in our lives, and we can see the part that other people played. It is often easier to look at situations from the past and be angry and resentful because people, places and things, and the outcomes which will never be quite what we wanted, and certainly not what we needed. And the answer back in the day, in my case, was always to turn anger and resentment inwardly and drink to oblivion. I realise now that pride and ego turned inwardly made me responsible for everything. I took responsibility for everything. I accepted the consequences and the losses as part of whatever nightmare I was living. And I often did this. I never pointed the finger, and it's a bit of playing God, thinking I know better, I can absorb all this. But the problem is we're human, we're not superhuman. Some years into recovery, I was very fortunate to be in contact with an ex-partner, She was never far from my thoughts for many a year, and our parting caused much grief, and I really do mean the deepest grief. And at the same time I was feeling the loss of my father, so two people I loved dearly disappearing all at once. It was overwhelming. I didn't know how to cope with grief, and I drank myself stupid. Somehow grieving my father was far easier than grieving my partner. I wondered if she and I would ever get back together, but fear, pride and ego stopped me, and for a decade I drank to oblivion on everything, and all my behaviour came out as extremes, trying to be in every relationship, trying to be this, that and the other, and burning myself out. And everyone on my side, this is going back to my partner, they were against her, and yet I still loved her. And the desperate desolation of those years, I lived them. And sometime later, about 19 years later, she wrote and asked me to forgive her. I did and had. And I wrote back that forgiveness had always been in my heart. I needed to remind myself that in the moment, any moment, for whatever reason, we are doing the best we can with what we have. And she forgave me for who I was. Well, that's a question. To this day I'm not sure. I may ask, but I'm not sure, and it may be unfair to ask after all these years. Forgiveness needs to be in my heart always. We're all doing the best we can with what we know in the moment of now. And the benefit of hindsight always is, well, would we do it that way again? No. Because we have the freedom to choose the right path. And how I express love and how I express grief is quite different today. In step 4, we do list our resentments at the world, and always when we cast blame elsewhere and point the finger like that, there are 3 fingers pointing back at me. In my world back in the day, the culture of work hard, play hard, the culture of living in the moment with a belly full of alcohol, did lead to extreme times. Humans are not designed to live at extremes all the time. The higher the joy, the harder the fall. And extremes of highs followed by the lows, no wonder we can burn out, which I did, and find ourselves in the darkest and desolate places where humans never want to wake up again. In my early days, after 90 days, the extremes of depression were amplified beyond belief. There was nothing in between me and my feelings. And then the next 90 days, I could feel some normality returning as I stopped resented and started forgiving one day at a time. Yeah, step 4. I used to have a note on the end of my emails which said, and this is very, very egotistical, forgive everyone, everything, every day, and if forgiveness does not work, express the resentment, for example, fuck 'em, and then work on forgiveness the next day and the next day. What is really important as time goes by is first, not finding myself in the wrong places with the wrong people doing the wrong things, so I've got the freedom to choose the right path. And second, forgiveness really does happen in the moment of now. And when I look back, even at the most difficult situations to forgive, I cannot escape my own part in what happened. It is never about fairness or what other people do. It is always about what I do and the actions I take to keep faith and keep on the path of truth one day at a time. So I would have been a far better person with the wisdom I have now back in the day. I don't have it then. I had to learn it. Very hard it was. And step 4, yes, when I look back in the step 4 resentments, I was the one who had the choices, and the choice was severely impaired by my upbringing and the culture at the time. And then alcohol took its toll. There's no blame in this for me or anyone to exact any sort of retribution. Forgive, yes. Forget, no. Amends need to be made where we can, and without doing further harm. I needed quite a lot of guidance first to see my part in what happened and why. because we can't just self-analyse, because we redact great chunks which people remind you of when you do the amends, and then you really do understand damage done. It would never be about asking forgiveness from others. This is true. It's not about putting the record straight and making other people be forgiving. It's actually getting to a place of making the amend and not expecting anything in return. And then it would never be about asking for forgiveness from others. Clearing the wreckage of the past meant and means that I live with a better understanding to the truth of now. So the living amend, how we live today, is really important. And the real freedom of recovery is how we live and have gratitude for life, the life we have, one day at a time. And even then, life will be good. Life will have bad bits and ugly bits, because this is life with freedom today. And how am I feeling this morning? I'm truly grateful for many words shared about how we can be disturbed by the way we see people treated who are mentally ill and put in front of TV cameras. And the gratitude I have this morning has pulled me out of some darker thoughts of times past. When I look back and see the damage done over the years, and I remember family could see everything that happened to me, and they could not stop me self-harming. I'm so grateful that I was able to stick with fellowship long enough to start life over again. And although the road has been trudged is very often difficult, because it is, the love of fellowship and the love of family keep me alive. Not only when life is good, fellowship, family help me in the bad and ugly times which we all have in recovery. Step 4 is a lifesaver, letting go the fear, pride and ego, and opening the door to have courage to change, faith in doing the next right thing, and confidence to make the most of what we have, one day at a time. This is the emotional and spiritual life, where we love, we are loved back, and there is happiness to be had in the endeavours we choose today. So I am grateful. You know, we're not superhuman in recovery. We just find out how we feel about life and the choices we have, and feel better about needs met, wanting, desiring beyond to the extreme will never help. It won't solve anything. Needs met, once forgotten, hopefully, just for a day. Don't forget, humans, we go out of whack quite quickly when life hits us face on and we're not sure how to cope with it. So there's always family and fellowship in my life now. And in the past, I was a lonely, homeless person and didn't know where to go. Thank goodness I had the luck to go to an A&E department, which made me sit there till I was reasonably sober, and then get a psychiatric person to come and see me. And without that person and without that intervention, had I walked away and continued to drink, I wouldn't be here. Some things happen which just change our lives completely, and we never know when they're going to happen. So easy does it today, not so dark as yesterday. The Serenity Prayer, which works in any moment of now, and it works for me, is to God, or in good conscience, or to the truth, love and wisdom of now. It's a meditation, a prayer, and sometimes a restoration back to sanity, so we can get some serenity in chaos. Can do, can't do, and the wisdom to know the difference. So to God, or in good conscience, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I'm learning this just for today.